Robert Ris, we have another beautiful episode of The Underdog. And both of us, we found out we're also following the Euro football, and there's one or two underdogs there, but not neither Georgia made it up there, although they were quite good, and neither. Yeah, I mean, is there even an underdog in the quarterfinals now? Would you consider Turkey and Switzerland an underdog, or?
Well, on paper for sure, but judging from the quality of their play, I'm afraid to say, but Turkey has a good team,
Mhm.
and I'm fearing my own country. So I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, even in chess, you can compare chess and football in that sense that
Mhm.
there is so much knowledge available nowadays. You can study opponents very well, and being the underdog or being the favorite, it's quite difficult to get something, to create something,
Yeah.
and that's I think both in chess and football, it's the case like that.
So we're talking about the underdog chess game today. Well, goodbye, cat. It's food time. My wife is preparing the food, and this is the episode with the least big amount of gap between one player and the other. Now you have to explain.
Yeah, well, that's actually a good point because I have selected a game from a very young Chinese guy. His name is Haowen, and maybe it doesn't ring a bell immediately, but he's a super strong player, 16 years old, and he just recently won an open tournament in Spain with 8 out of 10.
Oof.
Very impressive, sole victory. And the reason I picked it, it's such a surprise, as I think he's not having a title yet. He is 24-52, but no title. I mean, it's not very uncommon. It happens with a lot of Chinese players. They don't have
Oh,
that many opportunities
I
to
didn't
travel
know.
abroad to play many tournaments. So
Uh
he's
huh.
untitled, 24-52, but he's incredibly strong. And I think that his opponents they didn't underestimate him, but still, it's kind of a strange feeling that you're playing against somebody who's really strong and probably will get the GM title before he gets the IM title.
That
I
is.
wouldn't be surprised if that's the case because with this performance in Spain, he gains like 30 rating points, so that brings him even closer to the 2500 mark.
Mhm.
And probably it's his first GM norm or even second. I'm not entirely sure, but he's incredibly strong and he has a very good technique, as we will see in this game.
I'm super curious, and I actually didn't even know. So this is something which I haven't thought about that much. Probably you know more. So it happens occasionally that people just skip any title until they're GM. They just go like straight. We have
Actually,
2,500 and
it happens with a lot of players. I think, for
huh.
instance, back in the days, it was Vladimir Kramnik who had something like 2600 rating, but he didn't have a title yet. It could
Oh,
be that it was somewhat different, or he was
what?
still an international master with 2600.
Wow.
There are also people who consciously skip one title. They just they don't want to pay the fee for an additional title.
Oh,
I mean,
funny.
other people
Yeah.
they don't care about that. They just get as many titles as possible. But yeah, it happens especially with let's say more younger guys from the eastern part of the world.
Okay.
And well, I like it when you're being number 30 seeded in a tournament without the title, and then you're crushing the entire field. It's quite remarkable, right? So
Yes. So yeah, now I'm really curious. Okay, so
yeah,
he has white against
he, he's he,
Mr.
he's white against Stremavicius. It's a grandmaster, also
Latvia.
quite a young guy from Lithuania.
Lithuania. Okay.
And
Yeah.
it's played in the penultimate round,
Hmm.
around 9-10 rounds in total. So important game for the lead in the tournament. So the Chinese player, goes for one c4, e6, g3, and via the English opening, we are getting into a well-known variation of the Catalan. This is, let's say, mainline stuff. Black captures on c4, and now, well, the main continuation is to play either queen c2 or queen a4, trying to regain the pawn on c4. Knight e5. It's a kind of a sideline. Still has been explored in many games, so it's still well-known theory.
Uh-huh.
It's interesting because with this move you're intending to regain the pawn, but you're also opening up the diagonal for the bishop on g2, the famous Catalan bishop, which makes it harder for black to complete development on the queen side.
Uh-huh.
And I think that in this game, black was not really expecting this particular variation, and well, basically because of that bishop, he got into some serious trouble. Well, the main move here is knight c6. If you don't know this move, it's very difficult to come up with it yourself, because white can actually capture twice on c6. But you're giving back the pawn. Let's say if you take with a knight and then with a bishop, you put your rook on b8, and it's actually black would actually quite gets some nice
Wow.
activity.
Completely
And
new territory to me, all
yeah,
of that. So very surprising and very interesting and informative that you...
yeah, I mean, it's a kind of an opening, the Catalan, which has been explored at the very highest level,
Uh-huh.
and you'll find many Grandmaster games, but I think it's not the most popular opening at club level, or just for those who are playing only online chess.
Mhm.
So yeah, that is knight c6, and there are actually a lot of other interesting lines there as well. But the move played in the game, c5, looks kind of logical, trying to strike back in the center, but it doesn't do much against the bishop on g2. So white captured on c5, and possibly the queens can be exchanged now. Black can consider trading of queens as well, but then you're giving up the d file to white anyway. So black played here queen c7. This is still known. So black avoids the exchange of queens and hits the knight on e5. Knight takes pawn on c4. And before taking on c5, black first gets the rook over to the open file, attacking the queen. Queen goes to c2. And here queen takes c5 was played. So looks like not much is happening, right? I mean, maybe people will even think that black is doing fine with the rook on the open file and the knight being pinned. But as I said, I think this bishop on g2 is quite nasty, and it's very unpleasant to face this bishop. And here, the most natural move in the position. Can you guess which move it is for white? Arne,
It looks a natural move. So bishop f4 maybe, or yeah,
I like bishop f4, but I think there's even a more natural square for the
bishop
bishop.
e3.
Bishop e3,
Mhm.
just developing with tempo
Yeah.
a piece, forcing the queen to move again. There cannot be anything wrong with it. This move is a novelty, surprisingly enough, but quite a good one. Here, black moves the queen away to h5,
Oh,
and well, sometimes there are ideas with
exactly.
knight g4. But I like the move played here by white, and I think it's actually not an easy move to find at all. But white played here the move rook d1. I guess that a lot of other people would instead have played something like knight
Yes.
c3. The reason why this is so good is that you're kind of forcing the exchange of rooks at some point. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to go away with the rook and give up the file that easily. So rook takes d1 played, queen takes d1. Here, black continues developing with knight c6, also a logical move, and the knight comes out to c3. And I think that in a position like this, the bishop on c8 is having quite a hard time to be brought into play. You may put it on d7 as it's still defended by the knight, for instance. But white has ideas in any case to put a knight on d6, for instance, with pressure against the pawn on b7. And that in combination with this beautiful bishop black is not really going to equalize. Maybe black is close to equality, but it's not full equality. There's this long-term pressure. And that is the main problem in Catalan openings. It's the difference between the light squared bishops. If black could, let's say, just play something like bishop h3 and swap bishops, black is fine. But because that bishop on c8 is still there and not really having an active post on the board, it's also harder for the rook to get into play.
Mhm.
So, well, in the game, black played here this move, e5. Which perfectly fits into the plan I described, that you want to get a bishop out, probably to h3. But there is a clear drawback to this move as well, as you do weaken the d5 square. So white comes in with a knight to d5. Sometimes there are even ideas like knight c7 or just take on e7 followed by queen d8. So knight takes d5 played, and here it is bishop takes d5. So the bishop is still exerting pressure on this diagonal towards the rook, but since the pawn is on e5, there's also some pressure against the pawn on f7. Let's say if you do give white a chance, then maybe white can get a queen to b3, a rook very quickly to the open file. And I don't really see how black is going to cope with the pressure against weak pawns on b7 and f7.
How did all of this happen? Because due to this opening choice and all of this, black just had a little lack of development, right? And this is like backfiring a little. Is this?
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, you have to understand that the Catalan itself, it's a really good opening for white. It's very difficult for black to get a very sharp, unbalanced game.
Mhm.
So most of the lines they are quite solid, and people who play this line with black, they're aiming for equality. You will see it in
I see.
games of a lot of 2700 players. But if you're not playing very accurately, you can end up in these kind of positions where it's going to be like a long-term torture. And well, that's what happening at this point, because it's not much as you may think, but this kind of pressure it's kind of unbearable. It will it's very unpleasant, and it
Yeah.
will lead to more problems later on. So what you see here is that black is trying to play in a forcing way, trying to eliminate this bishop on d5 with the move knight b4.
Mhm.
So attacking the bishop here, but the bishop goes back to f3.
That's what I saw earlier. Yeah, I thought that's a nice move.
It's a very good move, because here you get some problems with your pawn on e5. And well, there are probably other ideas for white as well, like getting the queen out, getting the rook into play. You're trying to exploit your lead in development. So even if you're not going to win material here, how is black going to get a bishop out
Yeah.
from c8 and the rook into the game? And that explains the move played by Stremavicius. It's the move bishop g4.
Yeah, it has to come.
Now, if you take on b7, attacking the rook, you may take on e2, but that's
Ooh.
actually not a good move, because you're counter-attacking the queen. But white can play here queen d7, attacking the bishop, attacking the rook, and it will eventually lead to a loss of material. But instead of taking on e2, black should start with a clever intermediate move rook d8. So making sure that the rook is on a safer place, attacking the queen. After the queen goes away, then you take the pawn on e2. And here you see all black's pieces are coming alive. It's a complicated position, but black is not doing badly here at all. So rather than taking on b7, white goes for the exchange of bishops on g4. Queen takes, and you can take the pawn on e5, attacking the queen. So you're winning a pawn here, but the line goes even a bit further, and that's very interesting. I mean, it's in a way it was very technical position, but there were a lot of hidden tactical resources as well. The queen goes back to e6. attacking the knight. If the knight goes back to the, let's say, the most natural square, f3, there is knight takes a2. And black wins back the pawn, and you're not really able to catch the knight here in the corner. Knight can always get back to b4, and black seems to be fine. But the move played in the game is more precise. White dropped back with a knight to d3 instead, with the big difference being that now if you take the pawn, there is queen a4. And this knight on d3 covers the b4 square. So the black knight cannot return. And on the next move, white can just take the knight. After knight d3, black played rook d8. So putting pressure against the knight on d3. Queen a4 played, getting out of the pin. Things are getting very interesting now. Knight takes d3, e takes d3. And this pawn is really weak. But it's still an extra pawn, right? So it should be better for white. But this is actually the critical moment in the game, because black is not doing too badly here, as we will see. But you cannot take the pawn on d3 because it allows the move queen e8 check. And after bishop f8, you can exchange queens. And after that, the pawn on a7 is still hanging. So it was still quite some. It required quite some calculation. White has a pawn up in an endgame, plus that the pawns are quite vulnerable. So taking on d3 is not a good move. And black played here the move a6, which is in fact a mistake. It's a very natural move, as you're trying to save your pawn. And basically black is saying that, okay, I'm a pawn down, but your pawn on the d file is not that great. But here, very interesting moment, as I said. Instead of the two moves we looked at, there is a remarkable idea to generate some counterplay. And you can do that with the move h5. And that's probably something you would not have considered at all. Yeah, but in a way, it's very, very interesting. So in my opinion, there are two interesting moves. It's either to take the pawn on a7 or to prevent black from further advancing. But if you, let's say, go for something like h4 to stop the pawn, now you can take on d3. Because the queen e8 idea we have seen earlier is not that dangerous. You can go away with the king. So that is one idea. So you're avoiding back rank issues for your own king. The second thing is that after taking the pawn on a7, you continue with h4. And this is what we see in modern chess very often, especially when the fianchettoed bishop is no longer there. You can see that black is able to generate mating threats in just a few moves, with a pawn coming to h3.
Wow.
And even if you, as white, try to cover the diagonal with your queen, and you have two connected passed pawns, it may seem as this should be completely game over. White should be winning here, but things are far from simple, because after rook takes d3, there are also ideas sometimes to take on e3, and then open up the king, and there's a lot of counterplay. So one line, I checked it a bit further. This was all not played in the game, but let's say you overprotect your bishop and offer the exchange of queens, then the queen will come to the light squared diagonal, threatening h3 with mate to come. And so if you take on h4, there is rook d1, rook takes, queen takes, king g2, queen g4,
and it's a draw.
It's a draw. But that's the source of counterplay black should be aiming for. And well, that's interesting. Like you're pawn down, and you have two options: either to play it like opting for passive defense, or looking for tactical complications against the enemy's king. And this h5, h4 idea, it's probably enough for black to stay in the game. But okay, it was not played, not easy at all to calculate all of this. Black played a6, and now white goes queen e4. Centralizing the queen, a very good move, because trading of queens just gives white an extra pawn in this endgame, and very soon the rook will come to the c file and try to infiltrate. So that's not an option. Black played queen d7, And now pawn on d3 looks like it's under attack, but rook c1 is a good move. So that if you take on d3, well, you can take on e7 anyway. So that is pretty convincing. Therefore, the bishop was moved first to f6. So that piece will never be hanging on e7 any longer, and b2 is under threat. But here the move bishop b6 was played. So you're a pawn up as white, but you're still trying to impose new threats and try to get the initiative. Because here all of a sudden black is in serious trouble. If you, for instance, take the pawn on d3, you can go for the exchange of queens and come with your rook to c8.
Yeah.
And it's going to be mate, so that doesn't work. And the alternative, for instance, if you go away with the rook to e8, there is rook c7 as a counter-attacking move. Your queen is under threat, but you ignore it. And well, if you take on e4, you take on d7. White is still a pawn up and ready to take on b7 and create mating threats as well. So the position is quite bad in fact. Rook c8 was played, but now you see more and more pieces are coming off the board. Rooks are getting exchanged, and you feel that it will become easier for white to utilize the passed pawn. White first played b4 to make sure that this pawn on b2 is no longer hanging. Queen d7 played, and now the pawn comes to d4. So you see the pawn is on its way to d5 and further.
So this pawn seems to be the main weapon for white now and the game decider, it looks like, for me.
Exactly. I mean, things are maybe not that simple. It all depends on white.
I would mess it up.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, you still need to get rid of the main defenders still, which may not be that simple, but being on the defensive side, it's very difficult. Should you try to become active, or should you stand passively in such positions? And well, I think the position is getting nicer and nicer every move for white, because white is having an extra pawn, plus his pieces are more active as well. Maybe the best chance to save the game as black is a move like queen e7. This may look very strange, but let's say queens are coming off the board. You're first of all hitting the pawn on b4. But let's say you get a situation where you can block with your king in the center. It will not be that simple to use your main asset. You can as white centralize your king as well, but there may still be some drawing chances in such an end game.
But yeah, so is it right now? I mean, that's another thought I have. So black has a better rating, but knows that Haowen has, like, he's about to win the tournament. Is black now trying to defend with his life to get a draw, or do you think black hopes that there might be a little inaccuracy and it's like a non-title player after all, young? Maybe there is a way to still turn this around because of time trouble or something like this.
Yeah, well, the thing is that technically speaking, there is zero risk for white in this position. Let's say if it would have been a very complicated position with a lot of imbalances, you can ask yourself these questions. But here, I think black is really just trying to survive. To be honest, I also don't think that he underestimated his opponent.
Okay.
A lot of these Chinese guys, young kids, they have not played that many rated games as other kids at their age, or but they have put a lot of time and effort into studying chess, and they're really good at these kind of technical positions, converting advantages. So I think black is not thinking about the rating or the tournament situation. He is suffering enough. He doesn't have a choice either to gamble or to play solid. He needs to try to save it.
Yeah, okay. So, and if the queens would swap on e7 and then the bishop goes to e7 and then white would play bishop c5, is this?
Sure, yeah. I mean, you can do that, and probably black is gonna gonna keep the bishop on the board somehow.
Yeah, but then the king, as you said, goes to d7, and while the pawn from d4 maybe moves to d6, it won't be easy. That's
I think white should eventually be able to convert. I
yeah.
didn't analyze it too deeply,
Okay,
but
okay.
the thing is that when queens are coming off the board,
Yes.
you have the
It's
possibility to centralize your king.
it's a good
And
lesson to know for me in endgames too. Yes, yes, absolutely. I mean, yeah.
so what we get to see in the game is the opposite actually. I mean, there are some waiting moves here by black. G6, white pushes the pawn to d5. Another waiting move. Both sides put their king up one square. H4 by white. So here not much is happening, but it's all pretty useful for both sides. Now bishop c3 played, and there are various good moves. White played here queen c4 first, and after bishop e5, there followed bishop d4. I think white could have gone for this move immediately. But anyway, the thing is that after this move, you're kind of forcing the exchange of bishops. There was no way out for black to avoid this exchange. So bishops come off the board.
Interesting. I thought about d6 at this moment now because it's possible.
Ooh, Arne, wait a second.
Oh, I made a mistake.
Yeah, I think so. There should be queen e4 here. And then
Yeah,
bishop on
that
d4 can
I
be taken.
didn't spot in a moment. You're so right. Good, good, good. Okay, sorry.
Don't play for tactics, yeah, when it's not needed. So bishop takes e5, queen takes e5, and now queen d3. That's the way to go, so that you're behind the pawn and ready to push it.
Mhm.
I think here black came up with the idea I talked about before, like bringing the king to the center. Let's say the king comes in front of the pawn. Normally speaking, black should be able to wrap up the pawn, and yeah, then black holds on. But what happened here is king f8, d6, so pushing the pawn anyway. King comes closer, d7 check, king d8. And what do you think? What is the key move here for white?
Oh. Queen f3?
Very nice. Was the final move of the game. This resignation may seem premature, but it's a nice transformation of advantages because you're ready to give up your d pawn so that you can take on f7 and possibly even the pawn on g6. And even if you defend the pawn on f7 with your queen now, also the pawn on b7 is hanging. And yeah,
And that's enough. Yeah. That's hopeless, actually. My goodness.
Yeah, and you can never go for the exchange of queens somewhere because every king and pawn endgame should just be
even I could do that now, I think.
I think so. I think you could have made this 29-67 performance or whatever it is. No, I have a lot of faith in you, Arne, especially after watching all these underdogs.
I know all the tricks now, luckily. No, I'm very grateful that how well you're explaining everything from the opening to the mid game to the ideas, plans, tactics, and the end games here now. And yeah, what a surprise actually that black gave up. But then what to do? You just believe the player now and go like, listen, I had enough.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, in order to eliminate a pawn on d7, if you do it here with your king, I think there's just queen takes f7 followed by queen takes g6. That's one convincing line. You can also take on b7 and then pick up the other pawn on a6.
Yeah.
And yeah, alternatives, they're never going to work, I think. Let's say if you go queen e7, for instance, defending the pawn on f7, there is queen takes b7.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're even threatening mate, so you're kind of forced to take on d7, but that's just going to be completely hopeless.
King goes over to g. Well, yeah, it's just hopeless. I mean, of course, there's some other moves too.
Well, actually, let's just. What would you play here? Would you exchange queens or something else?
I would exchange queens, absolutely.
I think you can do it, but in a way,
it might be too tricky. Okay, so then I thought about a4, and then queen f3. Uh-oh.
And can I
Uh-oh.
go with my king
Am
to
I
the
messing it up?
center?
Am I messing it up?
Maybe we both are messing it up.
But isn't this still like b5 now? Is
Yeah,
this not enough?
you can always go b5,
Yeah.
and if you take here king c5,
King
I get
e4.
king here,
Yeah,
yeah.
king there, then f6 probably.
Yeah, and
And
then
then
you
king
should
e4, and that should no.
maybe g4. G4 is the way to go.
So I would have messed it up.
Me too, maybe. But you know what I would have done
You would have
actually is
just
that
taken the pawn, right?
I would have taken another pawn. So I would have taken here on a6 maybe.
I think that's my fear of the checks, and the queen is still there because then I have to deal with the queens and the checks and all of this. But probably
But you know, for instance, here you give a check, you go away with the king, and there's no more check. And the next thing you do is try to get back your queen somehow, defend the pawn on f2. Maybe queen b6. You always defend the pawn and then bring up your.
Oh, queen
your
b6 is so good, yeah.
I think that should it be. There are many ways to convert.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I think I learned a lot here. Actually, yeah, this is some good
Thanks
advice.
a lot, Arne. It was instructive. Thanks for all your input.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm always happy to mess up stuff so you can explain things a little bit better.
Yeah,
I think actually this is one of the most effective ways to learn chess anyway. So yeah. Very cool Underdog game. Haowen Xu, another one to put on the list of the many people you have already seen here for the next couple of years to keep an eye on. Thank you everybody for watching. Underdog will be there again next month. Hope to see you there. Thank you, Robert.
All right. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.